Anyway, Arizona's recent midterm elections, we've covered a few times. Kari Lake, highly charismatic, very eloquent, has all of the talking points down pat, knows the statistics. Um, she knows what's going on with the border. She knows what's going on with the economy. She knows what's going on with cancel culture. I'm not sure if she knows what's going on with the mafia. She has no politicians are allowed to comment about that, which, by the way, that should raise significant alarm for you, too. The only politician who even approaches commenting about it is Trump, and that's why I'm still on the Trump train. It's the big differentiator between him and Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is just your cookie cutter, young, good looking Republican GOP candidate. We all know that. He's going to fight for no abortions. He's going to fight for gun rights. He's going to fight for low taxes. He's going to fight for immigration reform. We all know that. It's not a surprise. He's fighting for parental rights. Okay, we get it. You're checking all the boxes of ideal conservative candidate. Cool. And you look, if Trump didn't exist and we were just trying to elect the least corrupt of all the corrupt politicians, it would probably be Ron DeSantis. But what people don't know about Ron is his background of soon as he got into office, immediately getting on board with the Israel agenda and even signing into law anti-Semitism clauses in Florida's state legislation. Like, it's a state crime that you can go to jail or be fined for using quote unquote hate speech or anti-Semitism. So he's bent over by the same people. Anyway, to get back to Arizona, we talk a lot about election fraud because it's real and because it absolutely played a role in the midterms. I mean, when you had Uncle Fester winning in Pennsylvania over Dr. Oz, that was obvious. A lobotomy patient who's never even had a job before, who couldn't even run the one city that he was mayor of. I mean, that was just comical in a very, very depressing way to see him win. So, people are comparing Katie Hobbs, who allegedly won the Arizona gubernatorial race over Kari Lake. The lead up to the midterms, in any normal, rational campaign race, you have the two candidates, they debate each other in a public forum so that all the voters can understand where the two candidates are on each issue. How do you feel about abortion? Okay, how do you feel about abortion? How do you think we should fix the economy? How do you think? What do you think about taxes? All this stuff, right? That is politics 101. There's no... that's just how it works. And it's a great method to do it because it pulls out or screens out people who are just bullshitting and being pushed by lots of marketing dollars. It's one thing to put your face and your name on the front of a website and call it the Katie Hobbs campaign. But if all of your policies, your views on each of those subjects are actually being written by somebody else, somebody like George Soros or one of his NGOs, then the problem is when you're asked to debate or when you're in a live situation and you're expected to be able to not only know those talking points and to be able to recite them back, but also defend them and explain where they came from and break down the other person's argument and explain why it doesn't work. That takes a very high level of intelligence. It takes charisma to be on stage and engaging with somebody else who's hopefully professional at their job. Katie Hobbs 100% refused to debate Kari Lake the entire midterms. Did not do one public debate. And Kari Lake invited her over and over. She was on fucking Fox News saying, "Hey, Katie, my people are waiting. Do you want to have a debate?" That's kind of how elections work. Katie avoided all of them. Not one debate at all. More interestingly, Katie Hobbs also happened to be head over all of the election procedures, meaning she gets to decide what the rules are with mail-in ballots, with the digital voting machines, the drop boxes. the cameras over the drop boxes, the hours that the drop boxes are open, any potential recounts, how to respond to any challenges. So does that not seem like a conflict of interest to anybody? Okay, I thought so. And Kari Lake, seeing this coming months before the midterm, as soon as she announced that she was running as a candidate, said, hey, the person I'm running against is running the elections. That's a conflict of interest. We need her to resign from that role, at least temporarily, so that there's no conflict of interest. Katie Hobbs didn't do it. She's like, no, I'm gonna run the election, and I'm also running against you. That's fine. That's totally not a conflict of interest. So then you have voting day come along, and you had somewhere between 25 and 50% of the voting machines in Maricopa County, the most important county in Arizona. It has the overwhelming majority of voters for the state. Somewhere between 25 and 50% of the digital voting machines go down. Knowing that Republicans are heavily skewed towards voting on the day of the election in person because they don't trust mail-in ballots, whereas Democrats obviously do favor mail-in ballots, and their votes tend to come in on the days after the election day. So the one day Republicans go to vote, you disable the ability to vote for somewhere between a quarter and half of the voting locations. And the person entrusted to investigate this and make sure it all went smoothly is Katie Hobbs, the person who you're running against. Does this not sound like a third world country rife with corruption to you? Okay, one last thing, in case any of this still sounded skeptical to you, look at the image on your screen here. These are the two of the candidates' social media accounts. On Twitter, Kari Lake has over 1 million followers. I'm sorry, 530,000 followers on Twitter specifically, versus Katie Hobbs' 130,000. So what is that? More than 3x? Go to Facebook, Kari Lake has a couple 100,000 followers. Katie Hobbs has 11. Go to Instagram, Kari has 370,000. Katie has 5% of that. Oh, I'm sorry, 10% would be 3,000. Oh my god. I can't do math this morning, guys. Sorry, not going to do it. In sum total, when you add the most popular social media networks, Kari Lake has over 1 million followers. Katie Hobbs has 150,000. So it's like, okay, 10 times as many people are listening and are engaged with your campaign, but somehow don't show up to vote on voting day. And the ones who did show up, 1 out of 5 of them got shot down when they tried to cast their vote. And the person responsible for running the vote or auditing any of the election results is the opponent. Come on, guys. Come on. Come on. And the Democrats will say with a straight face, doesn't sound like election interference or election fraud to me. I mean, that's just, Kari Lake probably bought all of those followers on social media, and those people who couldn't vote on voting day, well, they could have drove to another location to get their vote in. And, Katie Hobbs was the former governor. She's going to go and involve herself in a scandal to not conduct the election fairly. Come on. How likely is it's like these people were born yesterday. And then the whole, you didn't even debate anybody. You refused to debate anybody. What is the defense of that? She was already governor once and I was happy with the way she ran the state, so I don't need to know what her current stance is on the current issues 4 years later when we have 40-year high inflation, home mortgages that now cost 50% more than they used to, energy crisis. And you're talking about Arizona, so immigration crisis. You don't want to hear a current modern debate about these topics? I mean, this is actual brain damage and brainwashing. and very, very strong propaganda, but mostly election fraud. That's the truth. Just, it's pathetic that anybody thought any of that was conducted fairly and actually represented democracy, actually represented what the people of Arizona believe. Fun little factoid here on the topic of vaccines. We could be potentially looking at an avalanche of "I told you so's" for one. But, I talked about the destruction of the average American's faith in the medical institution, which is so tightly integrated to the government. You got to remember, the FDA is supposed to regulate big pharma. And so when bad drugs come out that are more harmful than hurtful, more harmful than helpful, or maybe they do help a lot of people, but the side effects were understated, or research wasn't done adequately into the side effects, or the benefits were misstated and eventually proven to be false. When people see that happening, they say, "Hey, government, I thought you were supposed to catch that." And then they simultaneously see Big Pharma making record profits for back-to-back quarters off of these drugs that the government was supposed to say, "No, you can't put that out there." And so now everybody is questioning not just the current jab, but all of the others that are required for your child to go to public school or to join the army or basically be an American citizen. From birth, you're expected to get this cocktail of shots that, sure, we pretty well understand things like polio and smallpox. Obviously those are gone and eradicated for the most part, thanks to these scientific advancements. But to point to those and say, "Yep, that means they're all good." No. And that's the gullibility of the average person, is like, because that's always their response is, "Do you see people walk around with polio? Okay, then." It's like, "Oh, you got me. Well, let me just tell you about the time where Pfizer allowed a drug into the market, the government and Pfizer allowed a drug into the market that went on to set the world record for class action lawsuit penalties. That happened too. So you can see the headline there. 90% of parents still say no thanks on the shots for young children because the data shows young children don't need them. Young children are at no severe risk of side effects to the COVID virus. That's just true. And so they don't need any shots, especially when the shots have a known side effect profile. It's on the VAERS website. A lot of parents are becoming awake to the corruption in Big Pharma and the lack of regulation from the government of Big Pharma. That's a good thing. Some interesting stuff happening with the World Cup kicking off. So it's in Qatar this time around, and Qatar is a very, very conservative place. And they're not on board with the whole gay pride, say it loud and proud agenda, with the Jewish agenda. So all these teams roll up with their little rainbow patches, including Team USA. Fans want to go and demonstrate that they're morally superior and more virtuous by going to these games, wearing rainbow shirts and gay pride shirts and whatnot. And Qatar said no, absolutely not. This is our country. You're not going to come in here and disrespect the laws of the land or our, religious beliefs. So you can go fuck yourself with all of that. And I honestly really admire that response. Like, nations need to have an identity. And it needs to be around some kind of moral compass. And that moral compass, I'm not going to tell you which religion it should follow, but if you're an American, it needs to follow Christianity. I'm not going to make that decision for other countries, but it's the same concept where if you're an immigrant or a visitor and you come onto our land and you start immediately disrespecting the law of the land, we got a problem. So Matt Walsh, conservative commentator from Daily Wire, who I've said many times we can't trust. He has his own problems, but he does basically call out the West. And, in my opinion, it's America is the worst of the West in saying that there is a total moral collapse here. Totally true. We kill, meaning abort, castrate, and sterilize our children here. We celebrate evil and debauchery in its most deranged forms with this whole transgender crap. It's sad to say, but we do not have the moral high ground above anyone anymore. Spot on. I have a love-hate relationship with the guy. He needs to find himself another job so he can start living a truly Christian life of not being beholden to a Jew. Okay? That's all he needs to do. But we all know why he's not doing that, because the Daily Wire is highly, highly lucrative and his name is blowing up. It's grown exponentially over the last few years. So, what's happening here. He's slaves to the dollar, which kind of undermines his whole Catholicism. But for me to sit there, for me to sit there and throw shade on the guy for trying to build a brand and, the way he puts it, provide for his family. We know you're above and beyond that now. We know your family's taken care of. We know that you're kind of milking it now. Sorry, man, I got a stuffy nose. You're kind of milking it now, and your morality is a bit in question because you've clearly prioritized wealth and status over the truth. And that is a problem. That's an existential problem. That's a big problem. That's a you and Jesus Christ problem. Need to have a conversation because you're not aligned with what he wants. Hopefully he sees the light. Hopefully people are telling him that in his ear and he's basically biding time to try to figure out how he can make that transition. I really hope for that. Well, let's say a quick prayer for Matt Walsh. Dear Lord, as much as we admire Matt Walsh's communications to the broad public about the conservative movement and standing up for Christian values, there is an obvious conflict of interest here in that the person he works for thinks that Jesus Christ is burning in hell. So what I ask from you, Lord, is to steer him towards others and to circumstances that will reveal this light to him and help free him from their agenda. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Everybody say a prayer for Matt Walsh. He's a good guy. He's intelligent and he has the ability to really help the cause. But right now, he's controlled opposition. Just saying it how it is, guys. Zuby, look, I don't know what this guy's claim to fame is. I guess he's a musician, but for whatever reason, he has a large following on Twitter and he trends a lot. And so I see his comments coming across and they're actually usually pretty spot on. They're not like heavily religiously biased. They're not heavily conservative or heavily liberal. They're just kind of neutral commentary, which I really appreciate. So Alex Jones has apologized publicly several times over the years for what he said about Sandy Hook. Many public figures have told much more damaging lies and, more importantly, done objectively worse things. Obviously true. Like, no one can even question that. And so Elon Musk said, in response to people asking him, hey, are you going to bring back Alex Jones? Elon Musk said no. And he gave in my opinion, one of the worst answers he could have given. I thought the reason he was holding back on that was because the ADL, NAACP, SPLC, the normal activist, high-pressure groups had a gun to his head saying, if you bring back Alex Jones, we're going to go after even more of your ad revenue and blah, blah, blah. That's why I was assuming he was hesitating to do so. But he came out and said that the reason he's not bringing back Alex Jones is a personal reason, and that's because he gave this sob story about his dead child who died in his arms, and he felt his heartbeat. And anyone who would profiteer off of the death of a child isn't welcome here, is a bad person, blah, 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 blah. So he went the moral high road of Alex Jones made this mistake, alleged mistake. I'm not sure if it's true or not. I'm just saying what the facts are. He has publicly apologized. He's been fined $1 billion. And all he did at the end of the day was hurt the feelings of a handful of people by making the allegation that their children didn't actually die that day. Okay, maybe he was wrong, and the kids really did die that day, and that's a tragedy. Okay, that's his crime. He hurt the feelings of some parents. And that means he shouldn't have access to free speech on your platform? Because you also had a child die and it was very sad for you? Come on, Elon. Like, this doesn't add up, guys. This actually doesn't add up. Elon is allegedly a very intelligent person who's able to see things objectively, able to see the long term. And this just does not add up. Either those high pressure groups actually still have a gun to his head and they're saying, you need to make a public statement to misdirect the reason why you're not doing this. Because he had to say something. Like, it was trending. That everybody was asking, hey, where's Alex Jones? You're bringing back all these conservative people. So I think something is still going on here. I don't think it's as simple as Elon, as a father, is just so hurt by the mistake that Alex Jones made. And I guess Elon's suggestion is that it wasn't a mistake. That Alex said that just to drive traffic to his website and to sensationalize the story. Really? That's what you think? If all that's true, then this means that Elon Musk hasn't done the research into mass shootings and learned why Alex might have suggested that things were not what they appear at Sandy Hook. Because things are not what they appear at the Las Vegas shooting. Everybody knows that. Go back to Columbine. Everybody thought there was 2 shooters. Turns out the kids in the school that day said there were more than 2 shooters. A lot of them. Dozens of them. They have the letters and the confessions on tape of that. Look at the ties between the FBI and the ATF and these other government organizations with these mass shooters. So there's reasonable evidence behind Alex's claims. If he was wrong, okay, he made a mistake. Worst case scenario, he suggested that it didn't happen and it was purely for greed and profiteering and sensationalism. Have you ever watched the news? How about last week when Ukraine said Russia shot a missile and it landed in Poland and they tried to draw us into World War III? And then the news printed that. CNN, NBC, ABC, blah, blah, blah. And then 2 days later, you find out, oh, actually, it wasn't a Russian missile. It was a Ukrainian missile. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so people make huge mistakes on huge news stories all the time. And a lot of times, they're not even mistakes. They're intentional. And they just get found out and they have to come clean. So, like I said, this does not add up. Elon is too smart for this. He's too smart to be making an irrational, emotional decision because he has a dead kid also. I'm not trying to sound insensitive, but this just doesn't make sense. Something else is still prohibiting Elon from bringing back Alex Jones. Here's a clip from somebody you may have heard of, Barack Hussein Obama, prior to his presidency. And this is important because you guys need to know who it is that fooled America and the flip-flopping that goes on. So here's Obama in 2008 responding to the question, at what point does a baby get human rights? Let's find out what Obama had to say back in 2008.
Define marriage. I believe that marriage...
Oh, this is actually about marriage. I'm sorry.
Between a man and a woman. Now, for me as a Christian,
I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. And then as a Christian, he goes on to say,
for me as a Christian, it's also a sacred union. God's in the mix. Define marriage.
Okay, so he says it's a religious institution with God in the mix between a man and a woman. Wow, that's a pretty conservative Republican kind of sounding comment to have. about what is your position on marriage, they're far right or far left. Obama of what years was he president? Was that 2008 through 2016? There you go. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, guys. Like, these people just say whatever they need to say to get elected. It is what it is. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we were talking about the jab and people's completely destroyed trust in the medical institution and the government that's supposed to regulate that medical institution. Well, here you go. The FDA is now flip-flopping, saying, we never said people shouldn't take ivermectin. Come on. Like, this just gets tiresome. This whole game of, I say on a podium, on the news, to the entire nation, whatever. Whether it's vaccines will stop you from getting COVID. We have it on tape. The president saying it, Walensky saying it, Fauci saying it, various governors of various states saying it. You get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. Okay, well, and then they try to later on in the history say, well, we never said that, okay? We didn't say that it stopped transmission. We just said it reduces side effects. No, I just told you. We have it on tape. I mean, I can pull up the tape if you want me to, but I've played it before. All you have to do is get on Google and search for does vaccine stop infection clip. And it's a compilation of like 5 minutes of all these people saying, go do it. You won't get COVID if you get a vaccine. So they had that lie that they then tried to retcon in the future. And then they tried to retcon the lie about the vaccine stopping transmission in the future. Oh, we never said it stops you from transmitting it to other people. Exact same situation. We have it on tape. What's up, Peso? Peso, I don't know how to say your name. That's extremely hard to say. But I'm good. I'm ranting this morning about some current events that are trending on Twitter. Currently, we're talking about the completely destroyed faith of the American people in our medical institution and our government for failing to regulate that medical institution. Whether that's the vaccine or it was the therapeutics that they told us not to take because they said they didn't work. The entire time we had evidence from other countries who were prescribing ivermectin and other therapeutics, monoclonal antibodies, and they were helping people with COVID. Call you P for short. All right, P. And they were actively discouraging doctors from prescribing these things that we knew helped with the COVID virus. And now, here we are, a year and a half later, they're trying to retcon that and say, we didn't tell you to do that. That was your choice to do that. You know, we didn't try to like blackmail doctors and say, we'll revoke your license if you give people ivermectin. We never did that. Come on. Go fuck yourself. It's so hard to read these headlines and not just roll your eyes. And the worst part is knowing how many people are just going to be like, oh, okay, they never technically said that, so it's okay. First of all, yes, they did. They did say that. This isn't a technicality. This isn't like slippery language. No, they flat out said the vaccine will stop you from getting COVID. Then they flat out said the vaccine will prevent you from transmitting it to others. Then they flat out said ivermectin is not a recommended drug to take for COVID. Like, they said these things very, very clearly. And now they're saying the opposite. How do we see how to pronounce it? Is Pisea O Sam Kriya TV Dadi. That's a mouthful. My name is just Josh. You can just call me Josh or Redpill Fitness or Beholden the Truth. Any of those work for me. So this is just keeping you guys aware on what the FDA is now trying to go back and change history on. Keep in mind, they also changed the definitions of the word vaccine and they changed the definition of herd immunity. So that they could then say, oh, well, we never said vaccines were meant to actually prohibit you from getting the medical ailment. Before COVID, everybody knew you got a vaccine for something that meant you were safe from ever getting that medical ailment. You get the polio vaccine, you never get COVID, or you never get polio. You never get a partial case of polio. You don't get polio, but with less side effects. So they said the same thing with herd immunity. Herd immunity used to mean natural immunity, and herd immunity used to mean you gain enough immunity to the medical ailment through exposure to it, through getting it and then recovering from it to the point where you're sufficiently protected in the future. That's what natural immunity used to mean. And then suddenly after COVID, you can verify these things using the Wayback Machine, by the way. You just go look at the version of the CDC website before and after COVID. Type in vaccine or type in natural immunity. And they changed the definition of natural immunity or herd immunity to say individuals, or the society's individual, the collective society achieving immunity to any given medical ailment through the combination of vaccines and natural exposure. Like, no, it didn't used to require any vaccines or any kind of medication. Let's see. At least they didn't recommend a remedy that doesn't work at all like the Brazilian president did. What did the Brazilian president recommend? Are you talking about Bolsonaro? So that's the story on the FDA. Okay. This was a couple little headlines here. One, CBS has done a couple comical things in the last week. CBS News. First and foremost, Twitter, via Elon Musk taking over, said we're going to bring back Donald Trump. They brought back Donald Trump. Everybody's, whatever, however you interpret that as a good or bad thing. CBS interpreted it as a tragic, awful thing, telling of the times, where they actually decided, they put a public announcement out, CBS News on Twitter, saying, we are suspending all activity on our Twitter account until we evaluate the situation, all because Trump came back. That was their reaction to a presidential candidate who's running for president in 2024 being on the social media platform. A little bit of an overreaction. So they were gone for less than 2 days before they had another announcement saying, we've surveyed, the landscape of Twitter, and we have decided that we can come back safely, but we're going to keep an eye on the situation. Like, these people are so full of themselves. Nobody even noticed or cared that CBS News was gone. Yeah. P, you're like a lot of people. We underestimated the competence of medicine in my country. Well, I would put it the other way and say that we overestimated. Like, people, the vaccines were pitched as they're going to roll out and we're just going to be done with this whole thing. They're going to stop people from getting COVID. They're going to stop transmission, and we'll all move past this and we'll all be happy and well. And that was the problem, is that we overestimated how effective our medication would be. The vaccine specifically. And the side problem of that was, intentionally so, our government said, we're putting all of our resources into the vaccine. All of it. All of the propaganda, all of the news media, everything is about the vaccine. And these other treatments, such as ivermectin and monoclonal antibodies, they said, do not look at those. Don't use them. Doctors, don't give them to your patients. In fact, we'll take your medical license if you give anybody anything other than the vaccine. And so it just, it revealed a lot. It revealed a lot about the true level of corruption in Big Pharma and the government. So the Hunter Biden laptop story, the other thing CBS did after their stupid little day-and-a-half vacation from Twitter, they come out and they publish a news segment saying, breaking news. It turns out the Hunter Biden laptop has incriminating evidence of Joe Biden's potential business dealings with Ukraine, and ample evidence of Hunter Biden's illegal activity, whether that's the hookers, the cocaine, all that stuff. And so this is an interesting Twitter thread because it's a liberal trying to explain why the laptop isn't a big deal and why he thinks the right think it's a big deal. Because what I just mentioned, the business dealings and the cocaine and the hookers and all that stuff, That's actually not why Republicans care so much about this laptop. What they care about is the fact that when we tried to share this laptop right before the presidential election, before Trump lost the election, we had this laptop 2 weeks ahead of that. The New York Post published the story saying, hey guys, there's this laptop out here with a lot of bad information about the Biden family. So, sorry, I got distracted by chat there. They never said that the vaccine would stop COVID. They just said it would work in most part of the cases. They said it would mostly help with symptoms if you get COVID. Is that what they said in Brazil? Because that's not what was said in the United States. It was said very, very openly by the president, by Dr. Fauci of the CDC, by Rachel Lewinsky of the CDC, that if you get vaccinated, you won't get COVID and you won't transmit it to other people. Compilation vaccine. What is this thing called? I actually have it bookmarked in my Twitter. Yeah, I can. I'm going to try to find you this clip that I saved. Because this is common. A lot of people, they have been tricked into thinking that this was never said. It's what they call memory holing a subject. So let's scroll down in my bookmarked thing here. Yep. 10 minutes of Democrats denying election results. Oh my goodness. Man, these damn tweets better not have been deleted. That would be sad if so. I would not be surprised, but this clip here is very important. This is in the English Parliament. One of the directors of Pfizer was being questioned on if the vaccine was intended to prevent transmission. And she said in court, this is somebody, a high-level director at Pfizer, saying, we never tested the vaccine for transmission. Which was not what was promised to us by... Is this it?
Overwhelming consensus is going to pop up a little bit and then go back down. And artworks.
These are lies about inflation. Where is this damn clip? Goodness, it's way back in my tweets. I wonder if I can Google find this. Twitter. Vaccines keep you from getting COVID. Is this it? No, that's actually from the CDC. That's propaganda. I'll have to find this again, and I posted it several times, so that's annoying that they memory hold that. But not to get completely derailed, CBS said on this Hunter Biden laptop thing that, oh my God, shocking news. Here we are 2 years later after the election was stolen. Turns out the Biden family is corrupt. And the liberals are trying to spin this as, who cares that the Biden family is screwed up and that they're on drugs and they have these business dealings? The Trump family is also screwed up. It's not a problem about what family is screwed up. The problem is the news censored this story, and they were told to censor this story by the government. The government came to Facebook and said, hey, these stories about this laptop, we think that's Russian propaganda. So don't publish that story right before the election when that would obviously skew people's perception of the Biden family. And we know this is true because Mark Zuckerberg said it openly on an interview with Joe Rogan, that the U.S. government came to me and said, hey, Facebook, we think this is Russian propaganda. Don't publish the laptop story. So it's not a matter of, it's like this liberal sits here and posts like 12 tweets trying to explain, who cares that Hunter Biden's on drugs? Who cares if he bribes prostitutes? The fact that the Biden family profited off of the Biden name is the same as the Trump family profiting off of the Trump name. Okay, all of that can be true. You're missing the big point that the government colluded with big tech to interfere with the presidential election. Ron Flipowski, do you understand now? That's the problem. We have an illegitimate president sitting in office right now. So that's the issue with CBS being retarded and people thinking that the laptop is about the cocaine and hookers and all that. That's not what it's about. It reveals the censorship and the collusion. Okay, I got a few more stories to wrap up, and then I got to jump over to my 9-to-5 job. So let's do this. I used to think folks who dodged the Vietnam War were cowards and unpatriotic. I was wrong. There's nothing patriotic about fighting a pointless war to fund the war machine and enrich American corporations and politicians. Spot on truth, my friend. That's a red pill and almost honestly a black pill that as you grow older in America, you have to accept that the stories you've been told about the reasons America has gone to war pretty much every time have been completely false. The world wars, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, now Ukraine and Russia.